Greetings all. I meet you today in the name of the Jericho movement for the amnesty and release of all political prisoners and prisoners of war who number more than 100 who are being held in United States prisons by the United States government. It is appropriate that we come together here today to specifically observe the 51st birthday of the most widely known of our political prisoners, Mumia Abu-Jamal. Mumia has the distinction of being the only political prisoner who has been on death row ever since being found guilty of the killing of a Philadelphia police officer by a Pennsylvania injustice system headed by the late Judge Sabo. May his soul burn in hell. Along with Lynn Abraham, when it is her too long delayed time to go join her ancestors. The Jericho movement has as one of its goals the unification of the struggle to free all political prisoners who are locked down in America's prisons. Because of the fact that Mumia has exhausted his legal battle in the Pennsylvania courts, we have got to carry the message throughout every community in the United States. For the crackers in Pennsylvania are about to take him out. Mumia is not the only way who prepared this. Yeah. They're about to take Mumia out, and the only way we can stop this state murder is to fill the streets of America with thousands of Mumia supporters who are prepared to free Mumia by any means necessary. And when the prison authorities see us in such large numbers in the streets for Mumia, they are more than likely to also give the other 100 or more political prisoners in their jails their freedom as well. How many of you are familiar with the names of these political prisoners that I speak of? Such as Imam Jamil Al-Amin, the former H. Rap Brown, Sunday Ada Akoli, Abdul Majid, Herman Bell, Sekou Odenga, Eddie Conway, Matulu Shakur, Jalil Montequim, the Move 8, and the list goes on and on and on and on. These are our freedom fighters who have been locked away with most of their serving life sentences. 1 minute? I haven't even started. My time shows. Yes, okay. These are our freedom fighters who have been locked away with most of them serving life sentences without benefit of parole. To us, they, like Mumia, are our true heroes. And to give you a small example of what I'm talking about, back in the room in the rear, on one of the tables, is a letter from one of the political prisoners that some of you know, many of you don't know. But the brother is named Russell Maroon Schultz. Now, he was a brother that it was discovered on April 15th of this year that he had prostate cancer. And his family is calling on all people of conscience to write a letter asking that he be provided with proper medical care, as well as transferred to a closer prison, Cy Green, where he is currently incarcerated as a 12-hour, which is a 12-hour journey round trip to and from Philadelphia. Now you can get this leaflet, and on the back of it is a sample of the letter that we want everyone, the person there, right, Ann has that, and you can make sure, please make sure before you leave here this afternoon, you go back there and get the copy of the letter, and make sure that you send it to the governor of Pennsylvania. I think that's Ed Rendell. So make sure that you take care of that important piece of business. Now, back in the day, when the police were roaming our streets like mad dogs, beating down and arresting anyone they considered too radical, these brothers and many sisters that I've spoken of picked up the gun and took on the heroic task of defending our communities and our people from this government's approved genocide that was supposed to eliminate us from the face of the earth. The fact that so many of us are still here today, still protesting, still demanding an end to American fascism, white supremacy, and the racism that we have faced since we were dragged here in chains, and which after 2 centuries of slavery continues to grow in intensity like a terrible, incurable disease, is a great tribute to our strength and our ability to stand up to anything our enemy can throw at us. Compromising, half-stepping, begging for relief will not cut the mustard. Only until we understand clearly that the only language this evil beast understands is the sight of thousands of angry people filling the streets screaming, "Power to the people, on the move, and free the land." This is when we will see the prison walls come tumbling down and the true dragons coming out to meet us, linked arm in arm with Mumia. And in closing, I'd like to remind you, please don't forget to visit the Jericho Movement's website to be well informed about our political prisoners. That website is www.thejerichomovement.com. www.thejerichomovement.com. And then
good afternoon. That was 9 years ago in Harlem. I think it was Salem Church, and it was to commemorate the 51st birthday of Mumia Abu-Jamal. For those of you who don't know, Mumia was convicted of the 1981, I believe, murder of Daniel Faulkner, who was a police officer in Philadelphia. And in 1982, I think he was sentenced to death. That was commuted to life without parole in 2012, I believe. Correct. And we're about to, Mumia's birthday is April 24th. And we're about to celebrate his 60s, he's turning the big 6-0. So he's still vibrant, and he's still active in the movement, and his spirit is indefatigable. Is that the word? Yes, it is. Today, it is my honor to have Suzanne Ross with us. She is a longtime activist, and she is prominent in the, let me get this right,
Free Mumia Abu-Jamal Coalition in New York City.
The Free Mumia Abu-Jamal Coalition in New York City. We're going to talk to her. She's going to update us on what's going on with Mumia. They're going to have celebrations, I believe, one at Riverside Church on Friday night, and they're going to have one in Philadelphia, the 26th, that is Saturday. Is that correct?
There's a series of activities. On Thursday night, the main event is actually, there's going to be a dinner.
And that's his actual birthday?
His actual birthday. On the 24th, Mumia's actual birthday, there's going to be a dinner and a performance by jazz poets, by jazz musicians and poets, including George Tate.
Oh,
and,
beautiful,
yes,
beautiful.
And his wife, Akoshua Tate, is going to be performing too. She's a singer. And the Last Poets, and a bunch of other people. And last I heard, Lynn Stewart was going to be there, and it's the keynote
She was
speaker.
at the 51st birthday. Hold that thought. We're going to go to my opening, and then when we come back, I'll be talking with the inimitable Suzanne Ross about Mumia's upcoming birthday, and we'll update you on the case. Into the fact where the victim is now the perpetrator and the perpetrator is now the victim. And that just drives me crazy. Okay, we're back. I was showing Suzanne the picture of my video taken photography superstar granddaughter. Her granddaughter is the superstar too, so I just wanted to let her know that I had one
There's
also.
another one.
Yeah. Suzanne, it's a pleasure to have you here. Now, you were telling us about some of the performers that will be available Thursday night. Let us know what's going on with the coalition in
But
Mumia.
before I go on with that, I just want to say how wonderful it was.
That's your camera there. So
I just want to say how wonderful it was to hear and see Herman Ferguson, who is now in his 90s.
Right.
And lives in the South, and I haven't heard him speak publicly for a long time, except very briefly. This is his old, militant, angry self, angry at injustice, and so clear about the political prisoners who we all need to be defending and getting out of prison. Mumia is really the tip of the iceberg in a certain way, or a symbol that he represents so much, and we know that. He represents mass incarceration, the fact that the racism of mass incarceration. He represents the desire of the system to lock up freedom fighters, to lock up people who have a message, who have a progressive message. He represents the horrors of the death penalty, because he was on death row for 29 years. Which means he was in isolation for 29 years, which means he wasn't able to touch anybody but a prison guard for 29 years, which means when his wife and his children, his grandchildren visited, he wasn't able to ever touch them or hug them. The first time I visited him on death row and spoke with him many times through plexiglass. And in 2012, when he was released from death row, and his death sentence was overturned, which was a phenomenal victory for our movement because the enemy was so determined to kill him. I was just looking on the internet about some of the things they said. Bury him deep, let him get close to hell. He should be burning for the rest of his presence in the universe. You know, I mean, horrific curses on him. And of course, the main slogan was Fry Mumia. And they were pretty arrogant and were convinced that they were going to be able to kill him. And the hand of the people, I mean, the power of the people stayed the hand of the executioner. And though we never wanted life in prison without parole, and I actually minimized this because the life in, getting him off death row because I wanted him free. So a lot of us kind of didn't even focus on that. But when I visited him the first time, when he was off death row, and I saw him walk in, I tell you, it still brings tears to my eyes to remember what it felt like. I was just speechless in this big visiting room. And I see Mumia walking in with his hand up like this and with a big smile. And, I knew he was tall because he had, when he was so excited when he would speak that even in this little cell where we were communicating behind the plexiglass, he would get up and I would say, oh my God, he's tall. But seeing him walking in and looking strong and healthy and then being able to sit and eat the lousy prison food from the machines with him, I tell you, I never enjoyed junk food as much as I did on that day. To just break bread with him, even junky bread, was an honor and an experience that I'll never forget. So I came to understand, and all of us have, that that was not a small thing to get him off death row,
Right.
that was huge, because we saved his life.
Right.
So we saved his life, and now we fight to free him and to get him out. And we're in the middle of a fight to free him. What's coming, we just had a recent major setback, not one that we're not going to overcome, because we do what we have to do. And what we do with Mumia, as Herman was explaining, has a ripple effect on all the political prisoners. And our slogan now, you know, people know the slogan, brick by brick, wall by wall,
Right,
we're going to free Mumia Abu-Jamal. Well, brick by brick, wall by wall, we're going to free Mumia and free them all.
What was the setback?
So the setback was, and this is a little complicated,
Okay.
but I think it's worth explaining, that Obama made, about 4 or 5 months ago, he made what surprisingly was a fairly good nomination for the Assistant Attorney General of the United States Department of Justice. We know Eric Holder is the head of it, but the Assistant Attorney General actually has a very, very strategic position because he's head of the Civil Rights Division. And that Civil Rights Division deals with all the issues of civil rights, including police abuse. And in fact, that division is in charge of supervision of police systems all over the country. So it's a strategic position. And when Obama nominated him, Deba Degbali is an expert on voting rights. And he actually argued 2 cases before the Supreme Court and won one. He's considered a very effective lawyer on the issue of voting rights, which we know is a major issue in this country right now that people don't know, aren't paying attention to, except for maybe in the South, where it's being challenged most dramatically. But the Republicans are terrified of keeping the voting rights protections, because if they can keep the disenfranchised from voting by all these hurdles they put before voters, you know, IDs and reading stuff. I mean, I can't remember the last one I heard about. It was really absurd what they're demanding. Then a large number of people who are black, Latino, immigrant are not going to be able to vote. Elderly who can't get to
elderly who don't have driver's licenses, or the elderly who are also poor. So not only would they not have driver's licenses, there's a great chance they wouldn't have passports or any of that kind of stuff, who have been voting for decades, not, you know.
So we have a really important issue on the issue of voting rights. But the Fraternal Order of Police and the right wing could not exactly attack voting rights. As I mentioned to you before, voting rights is like motherhood. You know, you can't say I'm against voting rights. You mean you're openly going to say you don't think people should be allowed to vote? That you want to disenfranchise thousands and thousands and thousands of people? No, you can't say that. Even the Fraternal Order of Police, with their racism and their fascistic methods and everything, did not want to be put on records. They were against the voting rights. So what do? Mumia has been represented by the NACP Legal Defense Fund for the last few years. And they were actually the lawyers on record, though many people had fought for this before, in terms of getting him off death row. So the Fraternal Order of Police immediately sent a letter to Clinton.
Obama, President
What's
Obama.
the difference?
Yeah,
What's the difference? Sometimes I call them Bush, Reagan, you know, really. So I just blasted Clinton yesterday on some show. Blasted him and his wife for their so-called progressive record. At any rate, they immediately wrote Obama a letter objecting and calling a Degbali, who had been temporarily acting head of the LDF, the Legal Defense Fund, an advocate for a cop killer. And they blasted Mumia. And the whole campaign for a Degbali was then defined by Mumia. he was a cold-blooded murderer. He has had a very fair trial, and he's been convicted over and over again, and still they want more. They're pleading racism when this has nothing to do with racism.
Right.
On and on, every name in the book, they practically called them scum, but it was that kind of language that they were using, inflammatory, racist, and all with the implication that there's no question that Mumia is guilty. Well, those of us who know what's happening know how much of a lie all that was, because there's tons of evidence showing his innocence, that the whole prosecution's version of what happened on December 9th, 1981 has been challenged with photographs that were hidden, with evidence that there was a fourth person at the crime scene who very likely was the person who actually killed Faulkner, which they withheld from the defense withheld from the jury, that this fourth person. There's all this evidence that has not, that never got into the record officially. They acted like it didn't exist and went back to the narrative that was presented by the courts under Sabo in 1982, and then 1981, 82, and then later during their appeal in 1995.
It's very difficult to interject any sort of reason to anything that involves the police. I mean, this same sort of rhetoric came out in the killing of Amadou Diallo, Ramali Graham. Anything that has anything to do with the police, they seem to be very, very, very powerful and are able to obscure the issue of evidence, of physical evidence. And that has been part and parcel. If I don't think Mumia would be in jail as long as he had been if there was any way that you could reasonably go through the evidence logically, but dealing with the police seems to be very, very difficult.
He never would have been arrested in the first place.
Right.
Because his record was stellar as a citizen, as a journalist, as a known personality of deep humanitarian passion, and as a nonviolent person. I mean, he was known as that. He was a peacekeeper since he was a kid. So they hated him because of his ideology. And from the get-go, they
share some of
defined
the inconsistencies in the evidence so people will know some of the things
the inconsistencies
that we're dealing
are, one, the photographs that the police withheld from the defense show that what the prosecution presented was not true. It simply wasn't true. Taxi wasn't where it was supposed to be, was missing. Where a key witness who was testified against Mumia was the cab driver, and he's nowhere to be seen.
And the confession itself.
Let me just say a couple of other things. The scenario, they said that they totally protected all evidence so that it could be used later on. You see the cop handling a gun with his bare hands.
Right.
They said that Mumia was standing over Faulkner and shot him, facing down like that. But several shots never hit Faulkner. And so you would expect divots on the sidewalk. There were absolutely no marks on the sidewalk. The evidence of the confession, the supposed confession, 2 months later, the main officer who testified, Wakshal, that there was a confession, they asked him, why didn't you testify right away? Why didn't you come, hey, you had a confession? And he said, well, I was so traumatized by the whole thing, I forgot. Now, what cop would forget? And finally, the doctor who treated Mumia, because Mumia was nearly killed, said that Mumia was so sick he couldn't say a word and never said a word.
And I really want to go over this in a way that those people, because you're very familiar with the case, so there's a lot of things that you are saying that you already know and understand. But I want to make this understandable to those who do not know the specifics of the case at all. Apparently, Mumia was in the hospital, and a police officer said that 6 months later said...
2 years later.
2 years later.
No, you're right. No, it was sooner. It was 2 months later. Excuse me, 2 months later.
2 months later, said that Mumia had confessed to the
I shot the MF.
Right. And Mumia was almost in a coma. He was unable to speak.
He was shot
but
in the lungs.
He was shot in the lungs.
So he couldn't speak, and the doctor's orders were, just let me take care of you. The doctor
And no one
sounds
else
like-
heard this
and nobody
but
else
him,
heard
and
this.
he didn't mention it
till 2 months later.
Till 2 months
Suddenly
later.
he remembered
Right.
about the trauma.
Okay.
And it was impossible for Mumia to confess because he couldn't speak.
Right.
So it's the same kind of thing that we just saw. One of the journalists in Philadelphia, Dave Lindorf, just published an article where one of the things that was said back in '95 and was repeated recently in this reenactment of the same scenario around the nomination of Degbali was that Mumia, that in one day during the trial, during the appeal process, they brought in the bloody shirt of Officer Faulkner, and his wife was in the courtroom, and that Mumia looked at her and smirked and smiled as though he was happy to see this bloody shirt. Well, guess what? It turned out that Mumia was never in court that day. But these stories are repeated again and again, and you know the big lie. We know that from the Nazis. Goebbels was the expert.
Right. If you say it over,
and over again, the masses of people begin to absorb it. So they had a chance.
And that's exactly what he said.
And they just had a chance. These liars, these pathological fascists.
Excuse me.
You know, it's a redundant term. They had a chance to put forward those lies again. A lot of the lies.
Right.
Mumia had a fair trial. Amnesty International said that his trial did not even meet the minimum standards, international standards of a fair trial.
Say that again. I don't want
Amnesty
to go-
International,
right.
in the year 2000, published a report on the case of Mumia Abu-Jamal. And I just reread it this morning, as a matter of fact, looking up the police, their analysis of the police. But what they said, the essential conclusion is that Mumia's trial did not meet the minimum standards of a fair trial by international standards. The minimum international standards for fair trial, I'm paraphrasing, but they make it absolutely clear. They talk about the role of the judge, the racist judge who was a lifelong member of the Fraternal Order of Police, the judge, the majority of the Supreme Court, Pennsylvania Supreme Court, where you appeal after you get rejected. You know, in the state courts, you go to the local courts in Philadelphia. Mumia had a chance to go to the Supreme Court, of Pennsylvania. So what happens? One of the prosecutors in his case, and the guy who reviewed his case and decided that he was not entitled to a new trial, in the state hearing, in the local hearing, is now one of the Supreme Court judges, and he gets to review Mumia's case, and of course he's totally biased. And on top of that, the majority of the state.
What's his name?
Castile. Ronald Castile.
Okay.
And we had a campaign at the time. I've been at this I'm a longtime activist in the movement, but I've been particularly involved in Mumia's case and political prisoners since about 1993. There's that about Castile, but on top of that, of the Supreme Court, in Pennsylvania, Supreme Court judges get elected. They're not appointed, they're voted for. You know, they have to be voted for. So,
is it like judges are voted for in New York?
Some judges, not all judges are voted for in New York, right? Some are appointed.
Yeah.
Some are
But
appointed.
the ones that are voted for, it's a sham. I mean, you'll have 3 judges on every single voting line, and there's only 3 spots.
Right.
So whether you vote or not,
Doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter.
Well, in Pennsylvania, particularly around the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, the majority of these judges, and I'll repeat it because it's really important. Not only on this case was the judge a lifelong member of the Fraternal Order of Police, but the majority of the Supreme Court judges received money from the Fraternal Order of Police, which Mumia calls, jokingly, that's called campaign contributions. But when the Fraternal Order of Police supports a judge,
Right.
the judge then vote. I mean, they're not going to support a judge who's not going to support their politics.
Right.
And their agenda, you know, I don't like to make fun of the Fraternal Order of Police because they're too serious. It's like, I remember, and I just saw a review of it recently, the Charlie Chaplin film, The Great Dictator. And you can't help but laugh because Charlie Chaplin's so funny. But, you know, you're crying at the same time as you're laughing because there he is, Charlie Chaplin's dancing with a globe, the whole world. Charlie Chaplin is Jewish or watching the Jews being carted off, you know. It's like that. So the FOP is like that. You laugh at them because they sound ridiculous, but their politics are fascistic. Their agenda is to give police huge powers. Their agenda, I mean, that's their agenda.
And the police do have
huge powers already, but their
power.
agenda is to give police more powers, which is one of the reasons they didn't like Adegbili. And they specifically refer to the fact that we, the movement, in 2010 and prior to that, we had a campaign to pressure the Justice Department to conduct a civil rights investigation. I mean, we got this from the 60s. A congressman had suggested it to us. It seemed like a good way to get attention to the case. And we were making some headway, but there were contradictions and problems, and eventually it was kind of dropped because the lawyer was against it. Well, anyway, they refer to that campaign. Often we don't know how effective our campaigns are. We underestimate. They refer to that campaign and they say, if Adegbili gets nominated, he's surely going to respond to that and conduct an investigation of this case. And the last thing they want is an investigation of Mumia's case.
Right.
So anyway, all this was going on. The interesting thing and the horrific thing is that at the end of all this propaganda campaign where they pressured Clinton, they pressured the 7 Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee to vote against the president, to go with the Republicans to vote against the nomination of Adegbili, and they were able to get 7 of the Democrats to vote against the nomination of Adegbili. And at the end, and they wrote they were on Fox News all the time. The Wall Street Journal supported them. Seth Williams, the DA in Philadelphia, supported them. Senator Toomey from Pennsylvania supported them. And they made so much noise, cop killer, cop killer, cop killer, thug, thug, that Adegbili was not nominated. Now that is shocking because, as Mumia put it, what we're seeing is the Fraternal Order of Police, the police was able to decide over a respectable organization like the National NAACP Legal Defense Fund, which unfortunately did not speak up during this whole time. They did not object to the scenario that was being laid out.
But the Fraternal Order of Police have been able to be effective in the face of international pressure, not just pressure from pressure from the NAACP. Mumia is an international issue.
And Leonard Peltier, I can't remember what year it was, right before Clinton left office, he was close to signing amnesty for...
And it's not personality driven, it's evidence driven.
So he was going to release Leonard Peltier. The police mounted a huge demonstration in Washington, D.C. The courageous first black president, Bill Clinton, immediately backed down.
That was cold.
I'm cold when it comes to the Clintons. In fact, a little cold when it comes to Obama. You know, I've been around a while. So they were able to prevent the granting of amnesty to an old man who's very sick, who's a hero in the Native American movement, who obviously was framed, and they were able. They are able, in New York State, it's not the Fraternal Order of Police, it's the PBA, but which sometimes works together with the FOP. They have the same politics.
Tomato, tomato.
But, well, they have the same politics, but they have rivalries of, you know, about membership. So they each want to get the membership. I guess it's dues or whatever they get out of it. But I saw a campaign by the PBA saying, if you go with the FOP, they don't defend your rights. If you're charged with something, we protect you forever and ever, and we give you more money. So there's rivalries in terms of power. But there's the same politics of increasing police power, denying rights to the masses of people, especially poor, especially people of color, especially immigrants and so on. So their agenda is the same. But in New York State, every time these 2 political prisoners that were mentioned by Herman,
Matula?
No, not Matula. Herman Bell and Jaleel Muntakim.
Okay, right.
Okay.
Jaleel.
Jaleel is up in Attica, and Herman is now in Comstock. I've visited both of them in prison. I know them both. They're amazing people. They really are. I mean, some of these political prisoners, when you talk to them and begin to understand what they've lived through, and that they maintain this faith. Who was saying something?
And their sanity and their dignity is very, I mean,
it's amazing. I'm a psychologist.
Really is.
I used to tell Mumia, I give you the Mental Health Award of the Year.
Yeah.
You know, because how did he keep his sanity and all? And even more impressive is somebody like Russell Maroon Shoatz, who was literally tortured for years and years.
Right.
So
he was in jail like 40 years.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
In isolation for 30 years, 20 years, more than 20. Anyway. So every time Matulu and Herman come up for parole, and they have sterling records, and they're loved among the prisoners because they share their resources. The political prisoners are cool, you know. They know how to, they're generous, you know. Marilyn Buck, I heard amazing stories about.
Matulu. I don't know how he can look so good.
Matulu?
Yeah, I've been out here the whole time. I don't look that good.
And he had a stroke.
Right.
And you know how he treated himself? What he did? Matulu had trained, I want to go back to Herman Bell, but Matulu had been the founder of the acupuncture center in the Bronx at Lincoln Hospital. He had trained many, many, many people. And here he's in prison, he's had a stroke, and they're not giving him the treatment he needs. He teaches a fellow prisoner how to give him acupressure. And he's doing great.
Wow. Yeah, you
Let me finish about Herman and Jaleel.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Because it's important. So, because we want to educate people as much as possible about all the political prisoners. We use Mumia to get the word out of everybody.
Right.
And Mumia is very happy to be used that way. So, Jaleel Muntakim and Herman Bell have come up for parole many times. And every time they come up, they have been denied on a basis that's unacceptable, which is the nature of the original crime. You're supposed to be judged for parole on whether you're ready to come into the community, on what you've done while in prison.
Right.
But they violate that, and I'm in the middle of a camp. I worked with the Riverside Church Prison Ministry, and we've worked on the issue of parole. In fact, there's going to be a demonstration in Albany on May 5th, and if you come back and let me talk about that, I will.
Okay.
So they came up again, they're coming up again, or I think, and each time they're rejected. And to show the power of
How long has
police,
Jaleel been in?
40 years.
40 years.
He was like 17.
And Herman?
And Herman about the same time, I believe. And they're both quite remarkable, very different types of personalities, but very impressive. In fact, Herman sent a message at the funeral for the memorial service in New York for Chokwe Lumumba. That was very, very touching because he spoke of him as a comrade. We've been in this together for 30, 40 years, he said. And this is what just happened to you, and I'm in prison. But we've been fighting the same struggle. It was a wonderful definition of political prisoners as part of the movement. There's no walls. There's no walls. Not for us. Not for us. So we have a progressive new mayor, supposedly in New York City, right? So who does he appoint for police commissioner?
Oh, yeah, Bratton.
Bratton. So what does Bratton do? The minute he comes into office, he says, I'm absolutely against giving parole ever to Jaleel Muntakim and Herman Bell. They should never get out of prison. You know, whose job is that? Who decides?
Yeah.
You know, aren't there rules? Aren't there, don't we have any conception of second chances, of evidence that there were questionable circumstances, that the atmosphere in the 60s was completely, you know, one of the family, the son of the cop who was killed in the scene that Herman was convicted for, came in and said, I want him released. He's paid enough of a price. He should be released. No, the police says, no, never. This relative, the son of the policeman says, release them. So this is what we are up against. And this weekend, we're going to celebrate our movement, celebrate Mumia for the extraordinary person he is, and celebrate our movement, which is one of the oldest, longest lasting movements in my lifetime. I mean, we have organizations that last long, but a movement that's this strong, 32 years later?
So
Not
you have,
much.
again, you have the celebration on Thursday, which is the
Thursday.
24th, which is his actual birthday. You have one on the 25th at Riverside.
24th at Riverside also. The same, for those people who can't come to Philadelphia, they're going to have a party.
Oh, so
Yeah.
you've got
Two simultaneous events.
Excellent, excellent,
Yeah.
excellent.
And then on the 26th is the big, now the one in Philadelphia on the 24th is dedicated to Amiri Baraka. I don't know if people can see this, if this can be enlarged.
Go to that camera there, and they might be able to zoom in on you. They have
If they can
robotics.
zoom in on this.
There you
this-
go. There you go. See if you can
Oh, good.
come in.
Great. So this is
There you go.
a
Just hold
busy,
it. Just hold it.
beautiful.
Keep going, keep
beautiful.
going, keep going, keep going. No, come in, come in. Come on, don't be scared. Okay,
Thank you so much.
pan a little bit.
So,
All right, forget it. they were gonna zoom in on
Yeah,
it, but you can tell
get
them
it.
what's on there.
So this is a flyer that talks about a Thursday night where the tribute, there's a picture here of Baraka, if you've recognized him. There's a tribute to Baraka, and Cornel West is the keynote speaker. He loves Mumia. Cornel has a way, and I love Cornel because of his moral, the depth of his ethics. And his love for Mumia. He'll talk passionately about how Mumia is a long-distance runner, and Mumia never broke down. Mumia was able to hold up and never sell out. I mean, he goes on and on about what Mumia represents in human terms. That's very inspiring. And he's also taken a very large role in fighting mass incarceration. He's become a major spokesperson against mass incarceration. So he's going to be there. And then on Saturday, we have a whole bunch of hip-hop artists performing. Dead Prez, Immortal Technique, Rebel Diaz, Circa 95, all kinds of musicians inside, outside. We're going to have panels indoors, but then at about 4:30, we're all going to gather outside for the musical performance, the major musical performances. There will be music throughout the day. There's a children's section. There's a lot happening. And the day starts with a march from about 10 blocks away, where the Black Panther headquarters used to be in Philadelphia.
Okay.
That's where the
Okay.
starting point is. And the march is going to be led
Mumia
by...
was a Panther.
Yes, Mumia
Right.
was a member of the Black Panther Party, joined when he was 15 years old.
And also, I'd like to say that Mumia has been more active as a prisoner than most progressives who swear they are active in some sort of movement.
claim
I'm
they
not-
paid their dues.
Yeah, yeah.
I paid my dues.
And it'll cuss you out if you intimate that you never saw them anywhere. You know?
That they know everything, and they know what Mumia should do, and they know what we should do, and all that.
Right,
They give us
right,
advice.
right.
So,
Because he was active in the when Aristide was
Mumia was locked up in 81.
yeah.
Aristide didn't come into power. till
No, but he
yeah.
when Aristide the last time that
Right.
Aristide went to the Central African Republic, Mumia called in and was very active in speaking on that
Always.
issue in Haiti. So there's a lot of issues that are completely unrelated to Mumia and his case that he has been very,
Mumia
very
is-
active in speaking to and
Mumia
addressing.
is a seasoned and high-level internationalist.
Right.
And by that, I mean not just someone who knows about international issues, someone who's committed and understands that our struggles are
amazing.
related. Our struggles are related.
Right.
So he will talk about Haiti for
Right,
hours.
right.
He'll talk about the mistakes that Toussaint Louverture made. He will talk about Dessalines, who's considered, the radical. He will talk. he will
That's a
talk.
polite way to
I mean,
put
he's
it.
respectful. He's
Yeah.
respectful, but he talks about, and he's such a teacher, and
Right.
I actually have a long educational background myself of teaching, so sometimes we compete, but when I'm visiting, but he knows so much more than I do. So
Right.
so he, for example, his quote on Haiti, we talk a lot. I went to Haiti to bring a message from him to Haiti last year.
Excellent,
Last
excellent.
June. And I've gone to many places. in
How
the
were you
world.
received?
wonderfully because Mumia's message was, I spoke against the UN occupation of Haiti. I spoke against the overthrow of Aristide. I spoke against the UN collaboration with the United States, all of that. And so it was my honor I have tremendous respect for the Haitian Revolution, and to come and bring Mumia's message and to be able to be outside, I just got completely carried away at a demonstration outside, started thinking I could chant in Creole. And chanted in Creole to the best of my ability. I've been to Venezuela bringing messages from Mumia. I've been to France bringing messages from Mumia, to Great Britain, to many places, Germany.
And in spite of this, and I go back to what I said a while ago, in spite of the fact that Mumia is recognized, acknowledged, and globally, all across the world,
from Africa through Europe, exactly.
And that people understand the injustice as it pertains to the presenting of the evidence in the Mumia case, not Mumia the personality, but the evidence
that this was a this was not a trial.
That they were not allowed.
This was a kangaroo court.
In spite of all of that,
controlled by the police from the get-go. I tell people, I just discovered.
In spite of the fact that Sabo is
a lifelong member of the FOP.
Correct, but has been witness saying very inflammatory, racist statements.
He was overheard to say in a next-door courtroom, quotes, "I'm going to help them fry the nigger." End of quotes. He was a court stenographer testified about that. And the person who reviewed that, Judge Pamela Demby, said that did not show, though it was a horrible comment, she said, it did not show that he couldn't rule fairly.
That's amazing.
Isn't that amazing?
That's amazing.
The case from the beginning, Mumia.
Can you imagine a black judge saying, "I'm going to help them fry the cracker"? Or anything.
He'd be fried on the spot. He would be fried on the spot.
That would never, ever be allowed to happen.
Mumia was watched by the police from the time he was 15 years old. I have documents in my house, Freedom of Information Act materials, that show he was surveilled as early as 15 years old. So by the time he came to trial, he was already a victim of police injustice because he hadn't committed a crime. They say in the FOI papers that he hasn't committed a crime. There's no evidence that he's committed a crime, but they're surveilling. Why? Because he's a radical, because he's a member of the Black Panther Party, and because Herbert Hoover wanted to prevent a black messiah, right? And Mumia has an amazing voice. He's very intelligent. So, but from the get-go, even after, so he's already coming into a trial with that kind of bias. But then
we have a phone call. Someone wants to
call in,
to speak. So when they get that ready, they can just put it through, and hopefully the technology will allow us to.
And I also want to make sure to read the phone numbers of how people can buy tickets for the bus, going on the bus to Philadelphia on Saturday.
Excellent.
People are coming to my house. People are calling.
Caller, are you there?
Yes, I'm right here, and excited, just excited about a very powerful show, looking at Dr. Suzanne Ross and my wonderful Matt. And waving at everybody.
I know that voice.
I know that voice, too.
Dr. Ross, it's really very, very important that the message that you're getting out, and the last piece you just talked about with leadership, because it's not so much the Messiah that they're worried about as the fact that they must destroy any evolution of a civil rights, black power movement as they had in the 60s. They caught them off guard in 63, and now we have Mumia behind bars because he has that kind of personality.
Charisma,
he just flows with energy and spirit, as well as one of the most brilliant minds probably out here in the world today. So they quieted this very young man. He was very young when they quieted.
27.
Yes.
27.
Yes.
And he was
so
arrested.
The fact that they've kept him here all these years is a testimony to me to the fact that he is a threat, along with other black men and women who have this kind of quality. So I am excited to hear you talk about the bus trip. I'm even more excited about the potential for us getting into Philadelphia on the 26th.
Yep.
So can we talk about that and the local piece at Riverside, I understand, on the 24th as well?
So,
Thank you.
Thank you, Cully. Great to hear you.
You should be here.
Yeah, we were expecting you.
Cover my back. Yeah.
I was going to say something about Mumia's charisma. Well, anyway, let's go on to let me say, first of all, in order to buy tickets for going to Philadelphia, take down, everybody have their pens and pencils, take down this number. The Free Mumia Coalition hotline is 212-330-8029. 212-330-8029. You leave your name, your phone number, say you want ticket, how many tickets, somebody will get back to you and make arrangements for you to get tickets. We have 2 buses, one leaving from Riverside Church, which is almost full, at 7:30 in the morning. Riverside Church, where the bus will be on 120th Street and Claremont Avenue. And the second one is the historic place where the Free Mumia Coalition has gone since 1995 to Philadelphia from that site, which is at the post office, the big post office downtown. We now had to move from 8th Avenue, so the bus will be on 31st Street, just west of 8th Avenue. So it's the southern part of the post office, adjacent to the southern part. Again, those are the 2 sites that our buses are leaving from. There's another bus leaving from 1199, which is on West 43rd Street, and for that information, I don't know the number by heart, but for that information, you go to bringmumiahome.com. Bring Mumia Home, and that'll be the 3rd place, the 3rd bus.
She talks kind of fast, so for the sake of expediency, we do have a number that you can call. It's 330-8029. 330-8029.
212.
It's a 212 area code.
Right. Thank you.
And call that number and get to Philadelphia. And
I know what I wanted to say. It came back to me, and it's an important point. When we talk about Mumia's brilliance and how his charisma and all that, every time I speak with him about the movement and, the threat, and he always says, my threat is that that there's a movement around me. The threat I pose is because we've been able to build a movement, a fighting movement. Mm-hmm. This is not a movement that sits around quietly and just signs petitions. Not that petitions aren't important, they are, and play an important role. But this is a movement that has stood up to the Fraternal Order of Police. International Concerned Family and Friends, which is led by the MOVE organization, has been the heart and soul of this movement.
Now, obviously, Ed Rendell is no longer the governor.
Played a major role.
Played a major role.
Major role.
Mumia's fate is in the hands of the Supreme Court now, the federal Supreme Court?
No, it's already, the Supreme Court rejected it. What can
people do at this moment to help facilitate?
Be in the streets. Be with us. See, it's not always just going to one target or one place. We've been to the Justice Department, we've been to the White House, we've been to the Harrisburg, which is the state the government of Pennsylvania. That's where it's seated. The governor is seated there. Some people think we should go back because, in fact, the governor, who happens to be a right-wing Republican and is against Mumia totally, the governor has the power to pardon him. The governor technically can release him. Also,
the governor of Philadelphia.
No, the governor of Pennsylvania. State. Right.
Philadelphia. Okay, that was stupid. All right.
I was going to say maybe you should take civics again. Remember civics? Separation of powers, all those things we learned about how this government works.
Yeah. Mayor of Manhattan, the governor of Philadelphia.
But the district attorney of Philadelphia can also drop the demand that Mumia remain on life in prison without parole. So,
but what would you advise?
I think the people should come out in the streets. We need to show our strength, especially after the Zadegbali fiasco. We need to show them how strong our movement is. That's essential. Mm-hmm. So the most important thing at this moment is to show up in Philadelphia on the 26th.
Okay, show
And
up
I
in
said,
Philadelphia.
show up in Philadelphia because we want to show them that they did not defeat us, that they cannot defeat us, and 32 years later, our movement is strong. Not
Who
only
will
is
be
it
speaking in Philadelphia?
on that day, we have a lot of panels.
Okay,
You know,
okay.
and then there's not going to be an outdoor. And we have about 15 international guests coming. We have
All right,
about 10 people
all
from
right.
France. We'll have some. We have messages from Germany, from
Obviously,
Holland,
Pam Africa.
Pam Africa,
is-
Ramona. Yeah,
is-
at the
right,
panel,
Right.
we're quite a few of us are going to be
Right.
speaking at the main panel at the end. But there are other workshops on legal issues, on journalism. You know, there are going to be lots of workshops. So there'll be
So there'll be opportunities for people to do what they're most comfortable doing.
exactly.
Okay.
People can relate. I mean, people come. I'm not saying people should just come and demonstrate passively. I'm saying people should come, check out the literature tables, learn about the movement, see what you're comfortable with, see where you can plug in, whether you're in D.C. I've been getting calls from Ohio, Chicago, of course D.C., of course New York. And people call, as of last night, somebody came this morning to pick up tickets for Thursday night in Philadelphia. And people are calling me nonstop, and my number isn't the official place where you're supposed to buy tickets. I get just read 3308029. People get hold of my number and call me. So there's definitely things are speeding up at the end, as they often do. And it's going to be a very exciting few days and an up for our movement, an inspiration for our movement. So I hope to see you all there.
Well, no, they're a little early. We still got like a minute and a half.
Oh, okay.
But go over that again.
The phone
I
numbers?
love them. No. The phone number is 212-330-8029.
Right.
Again, that's easier to remember. 212, jot down the 212 really quick, and it's 330-8029. That's for buses to Philadelphia.
And also you can go to the website, Bring Mumia Home. And the exciting thing about this is that we have veterans like myself and, of course, International Concern and Family and friends who are going to be there. But we have a lot of young people, new people.
Right.
The Impact Repertory Theater, which is young.
Oh, yeah,
They're going to be performing.
yeah,
They're going to be
yeah,
performing.
yeah.
They're coming on the Uptown.
Oh,
you want to be on a
excellent,
bus
excellent.
that's from
Now
elders.
that's sincere, because
If
we're
you-
out of here in 30 seconds.
Okay, so if you want to be on the bus with elders all the way to the Impact Youth, come to Riverside Church, but get your ticket, order your ticket right away. And please come out. This is a historic moment for the people to unite for justice.
We'll see you next week. Remember, this is even bigger than Mumia. We're talking about the whole prison industrial complex and the mass incarceration of especially people of color, especially black and brown people, but poor people in general. Mass incarceration is off the hook. I got 5 seconds to say, see you next week. Peace. We're out of here. Thank you.
That was great.